You're watching Eye on Africa. I'm James Creedon. These are the world, well, not the world news headlines, the headlines from the African continent. Angola's ruling MPLA party has convincingly won the general election, the Electoral Commission said on Friday, citing provisional results. Former Defence Minister Joao Lourenco will become Angola's first new president for 38 years, replacing Jose Eduardo dos Santos. But the main opposition party has rejected the outcome. Two white South Africans who were filmed forcing a black man into a coffin were found guilty on Friday of kidnap, assault and attempted murder. The case has caused outrage in the country, where deep divides persist 23 years after the end of apartheid. And the Dutch beer giant Heineken is making an ambitious play for the fast-growing Ivorian beer market. A 60-year monopoly came to an end last year. We'll take a look at the new lay of the land and what consumers think. Hello and welcome. Now straight to our top story on Eye on Africa. Angola's general election results. After a peaceful election on Wednesday, largely approved of by international observers, the former MPLA Defence Minister Joao Lourenco is set to become Angola's first new president for 38 years. Angola is the second largest economy in sub-Saharan Africa. It's also the second biggest producer of oil on the continent. But high inflation, high unemployment and growing inequality will be major challenges for the incoming president. Earlier, I spoke to Liane de Bassompierre in Luanda, who has been following the election for France 24.
We had several of the various election observers addressing the media, the AU and SADC, specifically giving a lot of good feedback, saying they were free and fair, it was very peaceful, but they had recommendations to the country that the voters' roll not be done by one of the ministries, but the Electoral Commission itself. They said that that would streamline the process. They also advised that the country have more accessibility, give more accessibility rather to the media, and that all parties get equitable coverage in the media in the country as well. Now, of course, as you just mentioned, the main opposition leader has rejected the results, and they said that they will take legal means to fight those. They had initially said, should they not be happy with the results, that was before the actual polls on Wednesday, they had said that they would take to the streets, but no word of that happening as yet.
Now, the MPLA party is still held on to power, but it's lost control of the capital, Luanda. Is it sort of on the downward curve in terms of its hold on the political scene in Angola?
Well, you know, it is the capital. It is where people can see every day how their lives have changed in the last few years with the drop in the oil price. So there is a lot of discontent in the capital, and we've seen that at the polls with them losing a lot of power. Of course, the opposition parties are now, they have a majority in Luanda, and we will see that they will really try to put a lot of pressure on the ruling party to stimulate the economy, to get it away from its oil dependency. We've heard a lot of talk about agriculture being a very easy way for them to diversify the economy in the long term. But what they need is the actual policy framework in which to do so.
Now, it's a case that has acted as a lightning rod for persistent racial tensions in South African society. Two white men were found guilty of kidnap, assault and attempted murder at a court in Middelburg, that's east of the capital, Pretoria. The victim, Victor Mlotshwa, was accused by the men of trespassing on their farm in possession of stolen cables. A 20-second video that they had shot shows what happened next. Mlotshwa cowering inside a coffin as one man pushed the lid down. This while the other threatened to put petrol and a snake inside. Now, those images shocked the public. A little earlier, we spoke to Jane Flanagan in Cape Town, who has been following the case for France 24. She told us of the relief, indeed the disbelief, of the victim.
Victor never even reported this incident. He was so unconvinced that anyone would take his story seriously, so convinced he was that he has no power still in the modern South Africa, that he kept the matter to himself. And it was only when his attackers or colleagues and contacts of his attackers posted the video online that his own brother recognized him and forced him to go to the police with his story and lay a case. And today, he really cannot fathom that two powerful white landowners, men in his area, have been found guilty of these serious offences. he simply cannot believe that this is actually something that he has been able to bring about.
And Jane, this case really seems to have captivated South African society. Obviously, the facts in themselves are shocking and will grab anyone's attention. But does it say something about the current state of race relations in South Africa?
I think a lot of people today are hoping that today's result will mark a sea change in the country, and that finally these sort of crimes will be taken seriously. And what has happened to Victor will now give pause for thought to all South Africans, that in the realization that finally these sort of actions are not going to go unpunished.
Jane Flanagan there speaking to me a little earlier from Cape Town. Now, Zimbabwe's First Lady Grace Mugabe made her first public appearance on Friday since leaving South Africa, where she was charged with assault. The wife of Robert Mugabe, who was seen as a potential successor to the Zimbabwean president, was granted diplomatic immunity and left South Africa on Sunday. A 20-year-old model, Gabriella Engels, accused Mugabe of whipping her with an electric extension cable. This as she waited with two friends in a hotel to meet one of Mugabe's adult sons. South Africa's main opposition, Democratic Alliance Party, has taken legal steps to have Grace Mugabe's diplomatic immunity overturned. To Burundi next, where there is increasing frustration over frequent power shortages. Many people can no longer work because of those power cuts. The economy has been crippled since the EU and other donors reduced their aid last year. That decision to cut aid was sparked by a crackdown on critics of the president's controversial third term in office. Nicolas Germain reports.
Many Burundians are exasperated. They say power cuts are more and more frequent. They sometimes last for days. Fatuma owns a mill.
We grind the cassava and the power keeps going off. But our customers come from far away with the cassava they want ground. We only get 1 hour of electricity a day. The situation is really bad.
Blaise rents out a small shop where his customers come to charge their car batteries.
We have no more work because of the power shortage. Before, I could make $17 a day. But now we can't work, and if I say that to the landlord, I won't keep the shop. The state could raise the price of electricity, but we need power.
In fact, the government has just increased the price of electricity. A few days ago, the energy minister tried to reassure Burundians.
I think we will have enough electricity soon. I see people running to buy generators. I say to those who have not bought one yet, don't bother buying one.
Burundi's economy suffered a huge blow when the EU and other major donors suspended 40% of their direct aid last year. They did this because of the deadly violence that followed President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial decision to seek a third mandate.
In Ivory Coast, a 2016 decision to end a monopoly in the beer industry has led to fierce competition. For 60 years, the company Solibra did not have to vie with any other contender on the Ivorian market. Now, Heineken is the new player in Ivory Coast, and consumers overall are pleased with that change.
In Ivory Coast, they call it the beer war. For 60 years, Solibra, which belongs to French group Castel, had a monopoly on the sale of beer in the West African nation. But in 2016, the government let Brassivoire, owned by Heineken, enter the market. And within a year, they were selling 1/3 of all the beers in Ivory Coast.
Our goal is to accompany the growth of the Ivorian economy. All our decisions are taken with that goal in mind.
The country's GDP has grown by 8% since 2012. Brassivoire put up huge posters of their beers across the country and complained that in some areas they were torn down. Some observers believe all these advertisements by both companies will encourage young people to drink. Both firms have promised to make an effort.
Because we have been in this business for a long time, it is our duty to make sure that we communicate in a responsible manner so that vulnerable people are not exposed to risks.
Last year, Solibra made €305 million in revenue. Consumers, meanwhile, are satisfied with the end of the monopoly. They say prices are more reasonable, there's a wider variety of beers, and no more shortages.
Now, the US-born Senegalese singer Akon has announced his intention to create an iTunes for Africa. He jokingly called the project A-Tunes in a recent interview. Akon has purchased 50% of the Senegalese company Music B and wants to use it to launch a platform for distributing, purchasing and streaming music. The singer-songwriter has previously launched ambitious business projects in Africa, such as Akon Lighting Africa, which provides electricity in 15 countries. He was named in 2010 as the 5th most influential figure in the African continent. That brings us to the end of this edition of Eye on Africa. Do stay tuned to France 24.